Hey there, kiddos, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Uncle Frank, and that you are having a great day. And in today's video, I'm going to be sitting back in my very squeaky chair, relaxing and having a little conversation with all of you guys about Yu-Gi-Oh! And upcoming sets and changes, and my thoughts on upcoming sets and changes. You see, one of my viewers, Jerry Smith for 2010, which is a interesting name, has asked me to talk about the upcoming Magnificent Monsters Yu-Gi-Oh! Set and give some speculation on its effect on the Yu-Gi-Oh! Market, I think. And while I don't like to speculate on future financing, that's just not really what I do here on the channel, I am more than happy to talk about the set itself and my overall opinions on it. Because, as you may or may not be aware, Magnificent Monsters is a rather landmark set because it is the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG's introduction to serialized cards, or Grand Master Rares, I think they're calling it, but they're just serialized cards, one of 100. So this is a pretty big change, a pretty big shakeup. The second major shakeup to the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG this year. Overrush Rares were brought over to the TCG earlier this year, and they breathed a lot of life, in my opinion and experience. They breathed a lot of life into the collectible side of the game, giving us some really cool cards that both look beautiful, are more or less identical to their non-Overrush counterparts, but look great in decks and binders, so they give players something to chase after, collectors something to desire from modern sets, and overall, something I've wanted for a long time. But Magnificent Monsters introduces these serialized cards, these even more rare than rare cards, with 100 copies of 18 different cards for 1,800 total serialized cards possible to pool per region. The Americas are one slot of 1,800 possible copies, and then the European slot for another 1,800 copies. So altogether, 200 serialized cards per English print of these cards, which is a lot of numbers rolling around. So you can forgive me if I got something wrong, I hope, because I'm not a numbers guy. So overall, my opinions on this rather monumental change is, it is a big change. This is impactful, but not as impactful as it could have been if it were done a few years earlier. Because by now, okay, we have kind of seen the impact that serialized cards can have on a game and its relative boxes, thanks to Yu-Gi-Oh's contemporary Magic the Gathering, having them around for quite a bit now. There's a nice pile of sets in Magic the Gathering that have serialized cards, and we do see that over the long term, having serialized cards in a set does assist in the that individual box's long-term performance. Those seem to do pretty solidly overall. Pretty good. And, you know, it's not just the serialized cards. There's other stuff. There's a bunch of cool reprints. There's alternate arts. But serialized cards are the star of the show for Magnificent Monsters. 3 in particular. There's a new Dark Magician card getting a serialized treatment. There's a Flame Wingman retrain. And then there's a new Stardust Dragon. And those guys are great. And I personally believe, I don't think this is a stretch to say, but I think those 3 cards in particular are going to be very highly sought after and seen as some of modern Yu-Gi-Oh's greatest grail cards to hunt, because Dark Magician, Flame Elemental Hero, Flame Wingman, Stardust Dragon, those are 3 of the most iconic cards in the game's history. Having a serialized variant of any of them would be, well, any Yu-Gi-Oh old school fan's dream, basically. Obviously, it's not going to be as great as like a serialized started at Kaiba Blue Eyes, right? Obviously, that's not going to happen. We can't go back in time and change the history. But this is a close second, you know, a different retrain of the card with a serialized version, I think is going to definitely attract some eyes and some money. Kind of almost singularly on these Grandmaster rares. And that does, like I said, it does worry me just a tiny bit because I do think Yu-Gi-Oh! As a collectible is already not on the greatest grounds, and I do worry that attention will be pulled away from some genuinely cool Yu-Gi-Oh! Collectibles, both modern masterpieces and some real great vintage uh, like icons. I think that a lot of attention will be pulled away from those cards for the new hotness that is the Grandmaster rares, these modern grails, as I said. And we've seen this happen before. This has happened several times in Yu-Gi-Oh's history where Konami rolls out this brand new, hyper awesome, super shiny rarity or special kind of card like Thousand Dragon, if everyone remembers that, or Dragon Master Magia, which was monumentally expensive for a bit. You know, the Starlight rares and the collector rares. Every time a new best of rarity is rolled out, a lot of attention's drawn away from other corners of the Yu-Gi-Oh collectible space to kind of reallocate itself there. And I think I've hoped that with the introduction of the Overrush rares, the or Overframes, whatever they're calling them in English, I just keep calling them Overrush rares. I've been hoping that with the introduction of Overrush rares, that would kind of slow down. But no, we are here just a few months later with the serialized cards, which are obviously going to pull attention away from even the cards that I'm super excited for. Yes, these are very cool cards. Don't get me wrong, like I said, Dark Magician, Flame Wingman, Stardust Dragon. Those are amazing cards. There's no denying that at all. But I'm hesitant to call them amazing because they're very cool, very rare, artificially so. But I'm less excited for these than I was for the Overrush rares because at the very least the Overrush rarity is something that I've personally wanted. My huge bias here. I've personally wanted extended art Yu-Gi-Oh cards for years now. I was super excited when the Rush Duel Overrush rare cards first happened. I was top of the world about that, super excited about that in general, and I've wanted something like extended art Yu-Gi-Oh cards since like 2016 or something, because I do genuinely believe that if handled correctly, that has a chance of becoming like the true icon of Yu-Gi-Oh collectability long term. You get some of the best, like take like the 5 best cards of a set, give them an extended art treatment, never reprint them in that extended art again, and you've got some genuine anchors for that set to appreciate long term. I think that could do a lot of good for Yu-Gi-Oh as a collectible, because as a collectible, Yu-Gi-Oh does need help. Yu-Gi-Oh is very much a player-focused game where a lot of the secondary market is very strongly affected by what decks are being played. Yes, there are all the old cards, the classic icons, the Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragons first edition stuff, the hyper iconic cards that are all rare, all memorable. You know, you've got the Dark Magician Girls, Injection Fair Lily, Blue Eyes White Dragon, OG. Man, I like Gate Guardian quite a lot too. My favorites, like Total Defense Shogun, which is not actually super expensive. Don't take that out of context. But you have a lot of old stuff that is like really expensive, but a lot of the big stuff in the modern era for Yu-Gi-Oh is more or less dictated by the game itself, which is why I say it's a player's game. The collectability is second for most hardcore fans, and if Konami isn't careful, in my opinion, if Konami isn't careful, and if this kind of artificial collectability isn't handled well, Yu-Gi-Oh could be a target in a very negative way. Everybody knows about the S word, the scalpers, and how they like to sniff out profitability and mega money and flip things for all kinds of cash. And this was a genuine worry I had when it came to the Overrush rares, and we did see some attention given to like Rarity Collection 5 and such by the more business-minded individuals out there. But scalpers could easily influence the secondary market and target sets that have serialized cards in them. They could, scalp the hell out of those. And for now, Magnificent Monsters is a reprint set, so it's not a huge deal, right? If a bunch of scalper individuals were lining up outside of Walmart or wherever, your local game store, to scoop up all the Magnificent Monsters packs that they could, it wouldn't be a big blow to the game, right? Because Monsters is, for all intents and purposes, a reprint set. Got a lot of cool reprints, a lot of cool alt arts. It just has the big draw of the serialized cards. But what about a future set? We already know that there are going to be future sets, probably with serialized cards that are not reprint sets, that are necessary sets for the game itself. Yu-Gi-Oh! As a game, as a competitive game, is already very expensive. I should not have to stress that, but I will anyway. Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks are some of the most expensive in the competitive scene for any card game. I have participated in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Before. It can be very expensive, and keeping up with the metagame can be ludicrously expensive. Every few months, you're completely replacing your deck depending on the shifts in the meta. It can be wild. My heart genuinely goes out to the people out there who are keeping up with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Top tier metagames month after month, release after release, because that sounds fucking stressful. All right. Sorry for swearing. One of you guys pointed out that I shouldn't be swearing as much in these videos. Sorry about that. You know, it does sound really insane to keep up with it, and scalpers, extra attention being brought to these sets, buying them up, making them basically unavailable, could in theory do a lot of damage to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Metagame as cards become even more inaccessible, even more difficult to source, making decks that much pricier. Which I know I will also say in counterpoint that hasn't happened with other games like Yu-Gi-Oh! But I'd like to point out again that for the most part, Pokemon, it hasn't happened in Pokemon, but for the most part, Pokemon's overall metagame is very affordable with or without scalpers, regardless of the area you look at. Yes, there's ups and downs, but for the most part, Pokemon's quite affordable as a game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not that affordable as a game for the highest tier stuff. You have decks that can easily go into the hundreds of dollars range. It's wild. So I do worry. There's a piece in the back of my head that tells me, hey, if this is all bought up and scalpers scalp the crap out of this, who's going to be able to play the game anymore besides like the ultra wealthy guys, right? The guys who are grinding every tournament out. So it's possible that is a legitimate worry I have, but it's a small worry. It's not something that it's not gonna keep me up at night. I'm not gonna freak out over, oh, the scalpers are coming for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Because we already had that possibility earlier this year with the Overrush rare cards. It didn't really happen that much there. I don't think it's gonna happen with serialized cards. I do think it could, but I don't think it's going to. If only because Yu-Gi-Oh! For the most part still remains a player's game, and the people who have tried scalping it in the past have been burned viciously on Yu-Gi-Oh! Some of the best sets in Yu-Gi-Oh!'s history are still relatively cheap, despite how old they are, how rare they are, and how genuinely collectible some of the cards in them are. Not all of them, but there are some really cool, very affordable older sets. And I just want to point that out. So for the actual original question, my overall thoughts on Magnificent Monsters as a set, it's another reprint set. Awesome. It has serialized cards in it. I'm iffy. I'm so on that. I'm not the biggest fan of serialized cards in general. I wasn't a huge fan when they dropped for Magic, for instance. Even when I had an opportunity to buy a bunch of them for really cheap. Yes, it would have been smart if I did, but I'm not a big fan of them, so I didn't. And I am very confident that they will be successful here in Yu-Gi-Oh!, even if I'm not a big fan of them. They're still cool. They just don't do it for me personally. So I'm a much bigger fan of just the Overrush rarity in general, is all I'm going to say. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Check out the TCG player link, the eBay link, Discord, Patreon, all that jazz. Leave a comment down below if you agree with me or disagree with me. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think serialized cards are not the end of Yu-Gi-Oh!'s new rarity gimmicks, as some people worry they might not be? Let me know. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching. Ciao.